because of the history of this country, we've always had to learn and know our culture, but also learn and know the majority culture. So if anyone can create a product for everyone, it's us.
What's up, everybody? I get to introduce you to somebody today that I think is doing some amazing work. We've been talking so much about the live audio space, and I get to talk today to my guy, Ayinde Alakoye, who has an impressive resume. Number one, he's the CEO and founder of Nēdl, which is what we're going to talk about today, a live audio streaming platform. And we're going to talk about the broadcasting because he has a specific broadcasting element on there, which I think you guys will find interesting. He's also a former Obama speechwriter, which is like, I feel like super special right now having, him on here to talk about the power of voice in that way, because that's what he did. That's what he does, is he makes sure that the words that come out of your mouth are, amplifying to what you're actually trying to get accomplished. So, Ayinde, thank you for joining me, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Will. It's great to be here. Great to be with Blavity.
Absolutely, man. So I want to know, first of all, like we've had so many conversations, and let's just get to it because we've had so many conversations of late of what's happening with other apps where, you can, you can live stream to the world. And particularly we've had so much conversation in the culture of like, we give away our cultural influence to platforms that aren't owned by us. I want to know, because that's the elephant in the room, like how do you think about that as founder of a social live broadcasting conversational platform?
Yeah, it's one of those things where since we've been in the space since 2017 with Nēdl, as in the haystack, when I started to hear those conversations on Clubhouse, I just had to like stop listening to Clubhouse because it was just too much. Like, imagine having a solution that's cured the need for Black people to own a product in this space and not being able to tell as many people as possible about it. So I just had to stop listening.
So what do you say to like, so let's solve the world's problems first before we get into what you're actually doing here with Nēdl. This is a product that is founded by Black people to give Black voices a platform to perpetuate, to ripple across, all sorts of all sorts of channels and spheres. And so I wonder first, where do you think the unique value proposition is for us in this space with products that are created by us to give a stronger platform for our narrative? What's the unique value?
Thanks. And I think the voice is the unique value proposition. I mean, there's a ton of differentiators, but when you talk about the voice, so my background, I created the first iHeartRadio app. I've been in this space, in the audio space, for over 15 years now, since 2003. I don't know what the math is on that. And we see all the time, African Americans are asked to use or presented with products that are built by other people all the time. And we use those products. We adapt ourselves to use those products. But African Americans are really in a unique position where, because of the history of this country, we've always had to learn and know our culture, but also learn and know the majority culture. So if anyone can create a product for everyone, it's us, right? And so that's what we've done. We've actually created a product for everyone that uniquely speaks to our needs as Black people to have access to the mic for the first time, really in an unfettered way, and also totally serves the broader audience in every way as well.
Yeah, I mean, I keep thinking of when I hear you talk and other recent conversations I've had, like there's this stat, is plus or minus, but by the year 2040 is when Black people are no longer a minority in the United States, and we become part of the majority. And folks who are historically, well, I shouldn't say, in the last several hundred years, the majority population here are then minority. And I wonder, how do we take advantage of that now? Because, the way I put it is, we had numbers on a plantation. Like we were we were the largest, culture on the plantation, but we didn't have the power. right?
That's
So
right.
we were not the ones in power. So quantity does not give us that influence and power that we so rightfully deserve, number one, but are working towards. And I wonder, using our voice, what is so important about what we have to say that apps like Clubhouse, that apps like Nēdl, that like whatever Twitter is trying to do and Facebook's trying to do with live voice, what does that then allow us to be able to do to move things in the directions that we want them to move?
Okay, well, just picking up from what you said, which was brilliant about the plantation and our culture being majority there, but not being in ownership, right? And sure, there was an occasional brother or sister that was brought up to the big house every now and then, but they didn't own the big house, right? So that sounds very familiar to another situation with another app right now. Now, I think what's interesting
Oh,
in
that
what
was bars right there. Say that again.
I didn't name anybody, but I think
that was strong, man.
Was you said it, not me. So what I think is important though is that we create things, not like, you know, one of the things that you hear on Twitter a lot is, and when you hear this discussion about African Americans and our power, you know, if we were going to do something negative or use violence, like that would have already been done. We're not in that space where we're trying to take something from someone else to sit at the table. We just want to add a new part to the table and bring our own shares. And so when we build products and we build solutions, we're building solutions with that kind of mindset in mind. And that's what we've done here, where we said, look, you know, media ownership is owned by 5 companies today, right? And so if you really want to be heard and to speak, you can't be heard or speak without some curation like tamping you down, right? And so what we wanted to build was something that was uncurated. We wanted to build something where discovery was the primary driver on the platform.
And so, being that you are a former speechwriter, you know, for probably the most eloquent, you know, politician, public servant that we've ever had, I understand that, you know, words matter, right? And on your site, on Nēdl, you talk about, you know, broadcasting, and like you use that word very specifically. And I wonder, talk to me about like the differentiator between this and what other folks may be trying to do.
I think that that our framework around broadcasting, around something that people know, is actually something that is an evergreen platform. Right now, we're seeing, because of COVID, so many people have different work schedules, and so many people are able to just even listen to Lunch Table right now during the day, because you have so much more flexibility. But there will be a time in the near future where people are getting back in traffic because of the vaccine, and they're going to be listening to radio again. And we see this solution about giving everyone their own microphone as a way that allows us to not sort of be just kind of a trend or a fad. We know that people will use our product, and they already do, for drop-in conversation, just like on Clubhouse. But we also see that there's just sort of infinite space for people like Fat Joe and Roxy Diaz, who are on our platform, to just broadcast and take callers.
So it's not like, you know, just a bunch of people are listening, you know, to me having a conversation with you per se. And like, I wonder, I'm trying to understand the difference between callers calling into the show versus you raising me up into the platform to be able to speak amongst the group.
Thank
I
you.
know for you, words matter. So I'm curious.
Yeah. So the biggest thing for us was that, because I did write for President Obama, I saw how important speech was, every word that he said was, but I also saw that, you know, he was unique in that he had the microphone, and not everybody has the microphone. So when you sign up with Nēdl, 4 letters, Nedl, and we're available on Android as well. But when you sign up with Nēdl, we give you your own live radio station instantly. And what that means is that we give you your own unique URL so that you can share that with anyone, whether they have the app or not, so they can listen to you instantly with a click of a button. And then they can also subscribe to you with by entering their telephone number to get an SMS alert whenever you go live. So this is all without anyone else having the app. And then when you go into the experience and go on air, you're presented with sort of the controls that you would have in a studio, and you have the opportunity to take callers by just tapping on the listener button, and you can take callers. So it really gives you the control. So there's no need to say one mic or let's reset, because as you're speaking, your words are being transcribed, and every word that you're saying is now becoming searchable, so people can discover you just by the words that you're saying out of your mouth.
So I want to talk about the tech behind this in a minute, but let's first start with you developed the first iHeartRadio app, right? And
Yeah.
you former speechwriter. And what happened that you said this idea? Well, number one, what happened that you had the idea, and then number two, like what happened that you said the time is right for this idea years ago?
Oh, you mean for iHeart or for
Nēdl?
For Nēdl, yeah. So just with the iHeart piece, it was my first startup. We were creating thumb radio so that every radio station on the planet would be on your cell phone, because I'm from DC and I miss go-go music here in LA. And I learned so much about what not to do and how to participate next time when something gets that big. But in this case, we were really kind of realizing that so many people were asking us with our previous, because this is my third startup, with our previous startup, they're saying, how do we start our own radio station? And for too long, I did like what a lot of startup founders do, is you have so much of your own vision that you just kind of block out these other things. And then I started to listen, wait, what if we did give them their own radio station and you incorporated search? Well, wouldn't that even the playing field? And the idea being that if Fat Joe says something, everybody knows Fat Joe and they're going to listen to Fat Joe. But if he's talking about coronavirus, and Will's talking about coronavirus, or Ayende's talking about coronavirus, well, that actually in search, if you take those words, it actually puts all of those words on the same playing field instantly. So the real-time search of it is actually what levels the playing field. And that was what was meaningful to me, because in Barack Obama's last speech, and by the way, he told me once, never ever drop a name. And I take that, I take that very seriously. That was a joke. But in his last speech, he said the biggest threats to democracy are actually one of the biggest threats is fragmented media. And the idea that we can all come together and listen to the same thing at the same time happens to cure that, because now we have more things in common. And so I really wanted to bring that to the world.
So if I understand just by the description you gave, as you and I talk about specific words, you're kind of doing like what a Google does. Like you're saying, okay, this word is being referenced around all these conversations. There's something happening with this word coronavirus.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, I mean, that now you're getting into, see, you're going further. You're talking about the deep tech that we're going to be doing next. But
okay, let me back up.
And right now, we founded Nēdl to democratize access to information and the microphone itself. And I couldn't have scripted this any better, but on election day, November 3rd, 2020, we were granted our patent for real-time keyword search of live audio. And that enables content moderation on the fly. So, all that hate speech that you've been hearing about on these social media apps, and these audio social media apps that nobody has a solution for, we have a solution for that. It's baked into our product. It enables real-time monetization of your words, because we're about sharing revenue. Like you didn't get to where you are. I see the pictures behind you. You didn't get to where you are by yourself. And we're not going to be hogging all of the revenue for ourselves. We want our users and our voices to participate in the revenue.
So I wonder, when you first come up with an idea like this, and I don't know if you're an engineer now. Are you an engineer?
I like to say I write code even if I don't commit it to GitHub.
I love it. I love it. But the tech that you're building is deep tech. It's real technology.
Yeah.
So when you first have an idea like this, what is the process like to finding that partner, that team to help you get this idea into the real world when they can go work on a million other things. Like, how do you get that team to come alongside you when you may not have, you know, that first round raise to be able to pay these folks? How do you get people to believe in that vision?
That's a really great question. And I think it actually points to why there are so many huge ideas coming out of the Black community, because number one, you got to sell the sexy, right? So you have this idea and you're competing with these big companies who can pay them more. So so it has to be a very big idea. And because African-American, Black and brown startup founders don't necessarily have the same resources as others, it probably tends to push us to bigger ideas, which is the irony of the whole thing, right? So that's what happened with us. I knew that we had a big enough idea that we could potentially get a big chunk of the evolution of radio in that $44.1 billion global ad market.
So just for everybody watching on Facebook and Lunch Table, if you do have questions or comments that you want us to get to, please feel free to put them in the chat. We do have producers watching. If you want to talk to my man Ayinde and you've got questions about what he's building, I would love to be able to field those for him. So I want to talk about, you know, taking from an idea to being able to get in front of judges, getting in front of pitch competitions, getting in front of, you know, investors. What was that process like for you, and where did you find the most success, and how much of it did you have to bootstrap, if at all, before you actually got to income?
Yeah, we started with zero with Nēdl. And I often talk to founders about what's the first thing you should do. First thing you should do when you start a new company is see if you can make that first $1,000. And that's what we did. We made our first, actually $2,009 by selling transcriptions to radio stations so that they could monitor commercial ads. Since then, and then we won a pitch competition at Sip and Sonder, which is local in LA, that's cultivating Black businesses. And now we just got into Google Voice AI, which is going to start, which is an accelerator that picked 12 companies. And by the way, not all BIPOC, which is something that we're excited about as well. Okay. And we're also going to be in the NYU New Media Hyper Accelerator that starts next week. So you know, it's about like taking those baby steps, figuring out how to deliver value very quickly so that you can deliver a product that sells, and then expanding, you know, from that point.
When you win a patent like the one you did, to where, you know, a very valuable patent, what is the thinking as a founder, as an innovator, that says, you know what, I'm going to go build on top of this versus white labeling it to the Twitters, the others of the world, and they just have them pay me instead of going on this long and arduous road of trying to build a company around the technology versus giving it away, selling it, I should say?
Yeah, no. So it's a great question, because it seems with us, so many people have come to us and said, just white label this thing. You know, who cares? Just white label this thing. And I'm a little bit taken aback by that, because I think it's really important for us to own. Now, you know, we're, you know, going out there raising money just like everybody else. And if we can raise the capital that we need to compete, that's what we want to do. Like, that's the business. Like, because, okay, a buddy of mine from DC called me last night, and he said, look, I don't do this kind of thing, but, you know, I really want to support you. And I also have to think about things differently now in this new economy. And he's in the arts. And he was like, you know, what can I do to support you? And what can I do to make money right now? And I said, look, go on Nēdl, and we have hay that people tip each other. So start to build your audience, and people will tip you hay. And people are making money on our platform right now from receiving hay, which is a currency on our platform that you can cash out. For every one hay you get $1. So, you know, it's about like servicing people and helping our community, but also about my daughter, who gets to look up and see, oh, wow, my dad owned a media company. So it's possible for me to do that too.
I love that you took this in that direction, because I think a lot about, you know, how we kind of go in on people who exited and sold to the big brand, or, don't own their technology. And at some point, how do we get the next Google? How do we get the next Facebook? How do we get the next, News Corp if we don't, commit to building the thing ourselves instead of white labeling the culture? So is it important to you that, yes, there are short-term wins you can take, but they don't get you to the ultimate goal, which is ownership?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't like, look, everybody has their own certain situations. So I wouldn't say anything negative about someone who does that. But I think it's interesting that we get asked to hand these things off as opposed to owning them. And it comes down to the algorithm, right? When you go to these social media apps, all of these social media apps that I know of, except for Nēdl, they're using algorithms that control what you see and what you say and to whom you say it. We're trying to change that with our technology and with how we're using our own builds and our own algorithms.
I've kind of alluded to this question when I mentioned, like the year 2040, when we become a more dominant player. How big can a platform essentially built around the Black voice, how big can it get? Like, so if I talk to you about, this is built by Black people, maybe not specifically for Black people, but it's built by Black people. It leans into the Black voice. How big can that get? Really? How big can it get?
I think it can be as big as the NBA. It can be as big as movies and technology. I mean, there really isn't. We're building. No one says how big can Clubhouse get, even though 90% of the people that built it are African American, Black and brown. So I hope that people don't say, oh, Nēdl's just for Black people, and then start to make that as a way to limit us. Not at all. We're built for everyone. We're starting off with the 90% of African Americans who are coming over from Clubhouse and saying, oh, I didn't even know this existed. We almost passed over you the same way that investors passed over you. But now that we know, we're supporting it. We've got Shantavia, and we've got like these Jasiri and Marriage for God, Marriage of God. So many like really hardcore users that use our platform and are committed to us through the bugs, through all this stuff, just because they know it's important to stand by African American founders, and we're so proud of that.
How do you lean into to that point of, I had this conversation last week when we were doing our Black History Month virtual summit, and I was talking to some operators who run Black-owned businesses, and we're talking about customer service, right? And specifically talking about how Black-owned companies get more hate or backlash when something fails in the system by our own people, and they won't come back because it's run by Black people. Of course, it's going to be raggedy or duct tape, bubble gum. How do you take people along the journey of building a company when they do realize the bugs? I think they're going to realize on Twitter goes down, Facebook goes down, Google goes down.
Zoom goes down.
Take them along? Zoom goes down. Like, how do you take them along the journey? What is the storytelling like in your mind that's important to keep people engaged as they're building this with you?
Thank you. We've been learning a lot actually from our users, right? They came over from Clubhouse and they were so patient with Clubhouse, and they brought actually that patience over to Nēdl, which has been really refreshing. And so, for actually the patience level is really on my side, because it's like, all right, I know what this can be when we have the fodder and the gas in the car to do this thing properly. So it's really kind of been patience on my side, and continue to encourage them in different ways, and finding ways to highlight them, and finding ways to give back to them, and finding ways to make sure that they feel heard and understand that there is a brighter horizon. Like, the next build is coming, and it is getting better every day.
Because you're indexing, and I use that word loosely, because you are learning about which types of conversations are proliferating on your platform, what have you noticed about the types of people who have been flocking over to Nēdl? What kind of conversations are we having that give you a lot of hope about you know, this is the kind of places where you come to talk about this sort of thing. And I'm seeing my people innovate on these sorts of conversations. Is it technology? Is it social issues? Like, what are we talking about on Nēdl typically in the greatest number?
Yeah, I think in the greatest number, it's social justice. People are talking about social justice, and what better place to talk about social justice and things that affect African-American BIPOC than a place that is founded by an African-American and a people of color team. So that's what's happening. And I feel like the conversations are very genuine as a result of that. But you know, what I'm really excited about as well is seeing that clergy is starting to come over and do sermons and do Bible study. I'm excited that journalists are starting to check out Nēdl because they can have a voice, and we're even giving them a badge so that we know who's a journalist and who's reporting on top stories. And I'm excited about, like I said, Joey Crack, Fat Joe coming on, and he's bringing his Instagram audience over to Nēdl. So yeah, it's fun.
I love it. I want to end talking about, and then I'm gonna give you the opportunity to talk about, you know, how people learn more about this and download it and the whole thing. But I want to start my close with this. So this whole issue around like monetization, you know, finding ways to give creators, you know, a part of the reward, right, of the things that they create, you know, I had this conversation with Isaac Hayes, who's doing fan base, and, you know, and, you know, finding ways, it's in his way, it's kind of more like an Instagram-ish type of thing, but, you know, you can have subscribers, Instagram / what's the subscription app?
Yeah, that one. The one that you don't want your kids on.
Yes, OnlyFans. Yes, OnlyFans. Yes, I knew economy, but his is a version of that, right? And I wonder how is Nēdl, first of all, is it subscription based? Do I have to subscribe to be able to listen to Ayinde, number one? Or is it just me? I want to support the work that you're doing, and so let me contribute to that in a Patreon sort of way.
Sure, yeah. So it's I hope your viewers know that we were saying this for a long time before others were saying this. But what we do is we give you hey, and there's 3 ways that you can generate hey as a voice. Well, you can have hey from comments, from tips, and from tickets, right? And so comments are, if you get over 25 people, I don't mind telling people now because it's like we're about to push this out next week, the next week or so. But if you get over 25 people in a room, then comments start to cost hey. So your listeners are incentivized not to troll you because it costs hey to say something. They can still comment, right? I mean, they can still call in, and that's free. But they also are incentivized to come early to the broadcast so that they can talk to you for free. And then, of course, tips. And then, of course, which is self-explanatory, but also through ticketed events. So you can have a closed event. For example, Roxy Diaz, she teaches about broadcasting. So she can charge 15 hey, 100 hey, whatever she wants to charge so that people can come into her live broadcast and listen. So there's multiple ways for you to earn hey. We know that the most important thing to do is to make sure that our voices are compensated. And we knew that when we built this product, you know, from the beginning.